the United States and China are going to be the two superpowers of the world, economically and in other ways, for a long, long, long time. We have a lot of common interests, and like any two big economic entities, there are times when there'll be tensions, but it is a win-win situation when the world trades, basically, and China and the U.S. are the two big factors in that. But there's plenty of other citizens of the world that are involved in how this comes out. And there's no question, and the nice thing about it in this country, I think, is that both Democrats and Republicans basically, on balance, believe in the benefits of free trade. And we will have disagreements with each other. We'll have disagreements with other countries on trade, but it's just too big and too obvious for that the benefits are huge, and the world's dependent on it in a major way for its progress. That two intelligent countries will do something extremely foolish. We both may do things that are mildly foolish from time to time, and there is some give and take obviously involved. But U.S. exports in 1970 and U.S. imports in 1970 were both about 5% of GDP. So here we were selling 5% of our GDP and buying up 5% of our GDP, basically. Now, people think we don't export a lot of things. Our exports are 11 and a fraction percent of GDP. They've more than doubled as a share of this rising GDP. But the imports are about 14.5%. So there's a gap of 3% or thereabouts. And I would not like that gap to get too wide. But when you think about it, it's really not the worst thing in the world to have somebody send you a lot of goods that you want and hand them little pieces of paper. I mean, because the balancing item is if you have a surplus or a deficit in your trade, you're going to have a surplus in investment. And so the world is getting more claim checks on the United States. And they to some extent, they buy our government securities, they can buy businesses. And over time, you don't want the gap to get to be too wide, because the amount of claim checks you were giving out to the rest of the world could get a little unpleasant under some circumstances. But we've done remarkably well with trade. China's done remarkably well with trade. The countries of the world have done remarkably well with the trade. So it is a win-win situation, and the only problem gets to be when one side or the other may want to win a little bit too much, and then you have a certain amount of tension. But we will not sacrifice the world. I mean, will not sacrifice world prosperity based on differences that arise in trade. Charlie?
Yeah, well, I think that both countries have been advancing, and of course China is advancing faster economically because it started from a lower base, and they've had a little more virtue than practically anybody else in the world in having a high savings rate. And of course, a country that was mired in poverty for a long, long time and that assimilates the advanced technology of the world and has a big savings rate is going to advance faster than some very mature company like Britain or the United States. And that's what's happened. But I think we're getting along fine, and I'm very optimistic that both nations will be smart enough to realize that the last thing they should do is have any ill will for the other.
If you only have $1 billion in your portfolio today, how would you change your investments? Would you consider more investment opportunities in emerging markets such as China? Thank you.
Yeah, I would say if I were working with $1 billion, I would probably find within a $30 trillion market in the United States where I understood things better just generally than I do around the world. I'd probably find opportunities there that would be better, incidentally, by some margin than what we can find for hundreds of billions. But I wouldn't, there's no way I'd rule out emerging markets. There was a time 15 years ago or so, when just because it was kind of interesting and it took me back to my youth, on a weekend I went through a directory of Korean stocks, and I bought, and these were small stocks. Well, they were small by the standards of either Korean or American business. They were big companies, but I found 15 or 20 and that were statistically cheap, and bought some of each one myself. And there are opportunities with smaller amounts of money to do things that we just can't do. And but my first inclination always would be to comb through things in the United States, but I'd comb through in other countries. I probably wouldn't get into very small markets because there can be a lot of difficulties even in market execution and taxation, a lot of things. If you can't find it in America and China and Britain and a few other places, you probably aren't going to find it someplace else. So you may think you found it, but it may be a different game than you know. Our problem is size, not geography. Charlie?
Well, I already have more stocks in China than you do as a percentage, so I'm with the young lady.
Okay, well, you want to name names? Do these stocks have names? Or?
No, I don't.
Carol?
This question, and
I should just add one thing. You will find plenty of opportunities in China. Charlie would say you've got a better hunting ground than even a person with similar capital in the United States. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So, and in a sense, it's logical that should be the case because it's a younger market, but still a large market. So that markets probably work toward efficiency as they age. Japan had this very strange situation with warrants being priced out of line and all of that 30 years ago. And people notice after a while and it disappears, but there can be some very strange things happen in markets as they develop. I think you'd agree with that, Charlie, wouldn't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jonathan?
whoa. You skipped me.
Did I skip? I skipped Carol?
Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
This question, and I would concede it is not a small one, comes from Gideon Pollock of Montreal. He says, the world knows generally how the looks of Berkshire Hathaway have changed since you began to run the company in 1965. Berkshire was then a tiny northeastern textile company, and now it is the number 4 company on the Fortune 500. What about the next 50 years? Could you give us your view of what Berkshire looks like in 2068?
I think it'll look a long way away. No, the answer is I don't know, and I didn't know 50 years ago what it would look like now. I mean, it will be based on certain principles, but where that leads, we will find out, and we'll have people that are thinking about different things than I am, and we'll have a world that's different. But we will be, I very much hope and believe, and we will be, that will be as shareholder-oriented as any large company in the world. We will look at our shareholders as partners, and we will be trying to do with our money exactly what we would do with our own, not seeking to get an edge on them. And who knows what else will be happening then. Charlie?
Well, I want to talk to the younger shareholders in the group. Those of you who, after we are gone, sell your Berkshire stock and do something else with it, helped by your many friends, I think are going to do worse. So I would advise you to keep the faith.
Well,
By
basically,
the way, some of that has already happened in many families.
I'll give his answer next time now that I see it get all the applause.
This question comes from Keeley and actually is directly about the issue of moats. He notes that Elon Musk this week on his Tesla earnings call said the following, quote, "I think moats are lame. They are like nice in a sort of quaint vestigial way, and if your only defense against invading armies is a moat, you will not last long. What matters is the pace of innovation. That is the fundamental determinant of competitiveness," unquote. So Warren, it seems the world has changed. Business is getting more competitive, pace of innovation, technology is impacting everything. Is Elon right?
Let
Well,
me answer that one, Warren. Elon says a conventional moat is quaint, and that's true of a puddle of water. And he says that the best moat would be to have a big competitive position, and that is also right. You know, it's ridiculous. Warren does not intend to build an actual moat. Even though they're quaint.
Yeah. There's certainly a great number of businesses. This has always been true, but it does seem like it. The pace has accelerated and so on in recent years. There's been more moats that have become susceptible to invasion than seemed to be the case earlier. But there's always been the attempt to do it. And here and there are probably places where the moat is as strong as ever. But certainly you can work at, certainly should be working at improving your own moat and defending your own moat all the time. And Elon may turn things upside down in some areas. I don't think he'd want to take us on in candy, but and we've got some other businesses that wouldn't be so easy to. You can look at something like Granimals out there in the other room, and it won't be technology that takes away the business and Granimals. It may be something else that catches the young kid's fantasy or something, but there are some pretty good moats around. Being the low-cost producer, for example, is a terribly important moat. And something like Geico, technology has really not brought down the cost that much. And I think our position is there are a couple of companies that have costs as low as ours, but among big companies, we are a low-cost producer, and that is not bad when you're selling an essential item.